Well, thanks, Erin. I'm Mike Glenn. I'm the founder of the Anderson Mental Health Collaborative. Super excited to be with all of you this evening, working with 1 in 5, who's going to be our host. First of all, I want to thank, of course, 1 in 5, Nancy Miller, the founder. She's been a great partner of the collaborative over the past couple years, and the collaborative wouldn't be where it is without the help of 1 in 5. So thank you, Nancy. We also have Erin Horn and Christine Bronner. Thanks to both of you for hosting this evening. Looking forward to hearing about the Sources of Strength and what that's all about. For those of you that are not familiar with our webinars of the past, we will be recording them. And so if you find the information interesting and something you think that would benefit friends and family, please let them know that it's recorded and they can watch it at another time. Or if you want to reference it in the future, if what you found this evening was helpful and you want to go back, you'll have that opportunity. We will be posting it on our Facebook page. A little bit about the collaborative. I just thought I'd go over what our mission and vision is. Our mission is to educate, share resources, and create a supportive environment around mental wellness in Anderson Township. And we've been doing that now for a couple of years. And our vision really is just to be the model that other communities can emulate and kind of look at what we're doing as far as trying to make a difference with mental health in the community. I also wanted to just recognize all the members of the collaborative, and I will read them off, no particular order. I just want to make sure I recognize everybody. So first, of course, we have Anderson Township, we have Mercy Health, we have Hope Squad, Parkside Christian Church, Step Up Anderson Township, Better Approach to Memory Care, the YMCA, of course, 1 in 5. The Anderson Area Chamber of Commerce, Forest Hills Foundation for Education, the Forest Hills School District, the Anderson Park District, and last but not least, Beach Acres Parenting Center. So you can tell from that group, we have a very supportive, collaborative group that's doing a lot of great things around the community. And we've come together a few years ago to try and really make a difference when it comes to mental health. And so without further ado, I will give it right back to Erin and Christine to take us through the strengths or the Sources of Strengths presentation.
Mike, thank you so much for that. And I love the community aspect. I think that plays well into what we're going to be talking about today. So all of those partners working collectively, collaboratively in that community sense is really awesome to support our young people and all people in supporting our mental health so we can live in a well world. And that is what we're going to be talking about today. Like I said, we're so excited, maybe a little nervous because I can't see all of you. I love the Zoom meeting so we can get those nonverbal feedbacks, but we understand that webinars are a really safe way for everyone to come together. So we are true believers that the best prevention really lives upstream. And we'll be talking about what that means in a moment, so you have a good sense. There's a lovely story we like to tell. And before we dive into the wheel, we want to introduce ourselves and give you a little bit of information about 1 in 5 and who we are. So a little bit about me. As you can see, I am Erin Horn. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a former teacher turned mental health advocate. And my primary role at 1 in 5 is really focused on youth engagement. I actually taught at Turpin High School for a little over 5 years, and I didn't leave Turpin because I hate kids or I hated my coworkers, but rather that after a family loss, I found myself wanting to shift in how I engaged and worked with youth. And so that is what I've been able to do. So I'm super excited to come to you and share one of my passions. And so Christine, if you want to introduce yourself, that would be wonderful.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for Mike and the Anderson Mental Health Collaborative for inviting us to talk to you all this evening. Erin and I are excited to introduce the Sources of Strength Wellness Wheel and help you think a little bit about what brings you hope, help, and strength. My name's Christine Browner. I am a nurse and a mental health advocate and the program manager at 1 in 5. Our organization was founded in 2010 by our fearless leader, executive director, Nancy Eigel Miller. Nancy, do you want to say hello?
Sure. I'm Nancy Eigel Miller, and I founded 1 in 5 after losing my husband to suicide in 2008. And I really, after doing quite a bit of research, I really felt like we needed to educate our youth more about what was going on in this arena. So really our mission at 1 in 5 is to prevent suicide by erasing the stigma around mental illness and promoting optimal mental wellness. This program that we're going to talk tonight about is all about optimal mental wellness. And Christine and Erin are going to do a great job of introducing that to everyone. And so I'll turn it back to them.
Thanks, Nancy. So over the last 10 plus years, 1 in 5 has grown as a community leader in the mental health space. So we work with over 85 schools and 6 universities to prevent suicide by erasing the stigma around mental illness and promoting optimal mental wellness. So today we're actually going to be covering the content from one of the evidence-based prevention programs that we help implement in schools called Sources of Strenght. Sources of Strenght employs a radically strength-based approach to suicide prevention. And I'm going to turn it back over to Erin, who's going to tell you a little bit more about Sources of Strenght.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. As Christine said, it's a radically strength-based, which is extremely protective for people, especially our youth. And so Sources of Strenght turns a traditional practice of identifying risk factors and warning signs on its head. So it really, Sources focuses on developing those protective factors using an interactive, innovative, strength-based model to develop resilient individuals and communities. Sources builds this resiliency through their peer-to-peer model at the middle and high school level. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see that model. And so they use adult advisors working with peer leaders, pushing out strategic messages to create a positive culture change. Instead of just talking about what not to do or what to do if you're feeling sick or identifying those risk factors, they really envision a well world. And so we are pulling a piece of this training. It is an evidence-based program. And that research has been done on implementing the full program within a community. The evidence isn't about just doing these webinars. We would need to be engaging in that programmatic work. But we are showing and sharing this because we love how it gives you a great visual on what it means to live well, what it means to be resilient, how you can build those resiliency factors within your own self, within your family, within your friend groups. So Christine is going to put in the chat a link to the evidence if you want to read about it. They also have a classroom-based instruction model for the elementary age. And this utilizes a curriculum framework with instructional coaches and teachers engaging students in lessons to increase wellness through strengthening, again, those protective factors, which reduce the risk of downstream negative outcomes. Practically, this looks like building health and wellness by developing resilience, strength, healthy coping, help seeking, trusted adult connection, and belonging. So those are kind of the 2 models that I just wanted to touch on. And if anyone in the community was interested in either of these models, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that currently you can get either of these programs at no cost through CARES Act funding, at least currently. And that is through the Ohio Suicide Prevention Foundation, Prevention First, and the Ohio Department of Mental Health receive that funding. And then we, as a partner, a 1 in 5 partner of their organizations, are able to push these programs out and bring the program to our communities, which is lovely. I was so fortunate to be able to become a certified regional trainer in 2019. And y'all might think that I'm being, I don't even know, over the top, but it truly has changed my life. I'm so grateful for this model that I can tap into. I didn't realize how much I would need it until COVID hit. And I've also been, because of COVID, I've been really grateful that I have been allowed the opportunity to train alongside the national team virtually on multiple adult advisor and peer leader trainings, which really allows me to make my training and my abilities even stronger when we bring it to your communities, which we're doing right now. And like I said earlier, the reason we are utilizing a component of this training is that we really do believe these 8 protective factors that you'll be able to see, this wheel, really provides that visual component that I personally need when thinking through how to build up resilience and wellness. We hear people talk about resiliency. We hear people saying, oh, we must be more resilient. We need to do this. We need to do that to be well. But putting it in a framework just helps us be so clear and so intentional and purposeful with how we practice wellness. And I do want to be clear again that the evidence-based research that has been done looks at that peer leader model and not at just doing community webinars. So you would have to implement the full program with fidelity to really see those outcomes that Christine shared with you. But for the next bit of time we have, about 45 minutes, we are going to be putting the practice and practicing a community of strength. And like Mike said earlier, the Anderson Mental Health Collaborative comes together at the community level. And we want to be part of that. We want to provide you with practical ways to practice strength. We've taken to saying recently that everything in Sources is a learned skill. And we're so grateful that you're here to learn with us today, because Christine and I will jump at any opportunity to share the good news.
True.
Right, Christine? So you're likely coming into this space carrying a lot of different thoughts, feelings, emotions, identities. I know I am. We're in the midst of a lot. We have the pandemic, civil rights movement, social unrest, system inequalities, uncertainty about the future and what that looks like, and so much more within our own smaller communities. In our conversation today, the broader work of Sources is inextricably linked to our current reality. The vision of Sources is to empower a well world, which lines up really well with 1 in 5's mission of promoting optimal mental wellness. And we want to do this not just at the individual level. While that's important, we want to do it at the social, the structural level in our country, in our counties, in our communities, our schools, and knowing that wellness is for all of us, for the youth, the young, all the way to the older. And so we believe that our time together over the course of our time together is going to be really beneficial for our own mental health and wellness. We want to keep this as interactive as a webinar can be. So we don't want it to just be a presentation. We want it to be participation. And the best way to do that is through the raise hand feature. When we're asking questions, you can raise your virtual hand or put stuff in the chat. Please feel free. We want to see what your questions are. What are you drawing strength on? So we can share that out and we can get other people thinking, oh, that works for that person. Maybe I too can try that. So please, and you can put questions in the Q&A if you have them. We want you to participate. So we're going to get started by looking at the history of Sources. And so I will advance to my next slide if I can get there. So this is the founder of Sources of Strenght. He used to be the executive director, but he is no longer, as he is moving into retirement, or trying to, I think. But anyway, this is Mark Lomari. I have been super fortunate to do one or two of my virtual trainings with him. And if you ever want to be really nervous, do a training with the person who created the program. But an amazing human. He lives up in, he created the program up in rural North Dakota. He still lives there. He was the director of the Police Youth Bureau before he created this program. So for 16 years, he did crisis response work, really arriving on the scene, if you will, after a suicide attempt or a drunk driving incident, or maybe a substance abuse overdose, and lots of other challenges. And part of his job included providing crisis counseling. And over the course of 3 years, he attended 30 youth funerals, which is a lot. And he just was sitting there thinking, what, we're not doing something, right? Everything felt truly crisis driven. He felt like he wasn't doing true prevention work. He was doing intervention work. They had a lot of programs going on, and they would come into a room with kids and ask, what are the warning signs? What are the risk factors for depression or suicide? And the kids could list them, right? And then he would ask them, what do you do to help yourself? And nobody had an answer. And so he knew there was a gap. He could feel this gap. And so they started talking and doing community work, talking about what does resiliency, what does recovery look like, which we'll jump into. Before we do that, I'm going to let Christine share a little bit about what we mean when we say true prevention, moving upstream.
Great, thanks, Erin. So Erin talked about how Sources of Strenght takes a radically upstream approach to prevention. And we like to tell a parable that explains what we mean when we talk about upstream approach. And for those of you who have done prevention work before, this parable might be familiar to you. But it goes like this. So there was a woman who lived along a river situated right next to a waterfall. You can picture her in that slide right there. And one day she takes a walk every day along the river's edge. And one day she hears a shout and she sees a child caught in the current. And this child is about to go over the waterfall. So she's a caring individual, right? She does what we all would do. She springs into action. She jumps into the river. She swims over to the child and she pulls him to safety before he goes over the waterfall. Shoo! Okay, disaster averted. The next day, she takes her usual walk and hears another scream. And sure enough, there is another child caught in the current and is heading straight for the waterfall. So as she pulls the child out and gets her to safety, she hears yet another shout. She realizes then there's an actual overwhelming number of kids who are being swept towards the dangerous waterfall. So she goes to the other caring people in her community, and they begin to get organized to see what they can do to help solve this problem. They know they need to do something. So they train lifeguards, they build watchtowers so they can look down in the river and see the kids before they get to the waterfall. And they teach people CPR. And they're able to save a lot of lives. But unfortunately, some kids still end up going over the waterfall. So one day, the woman's on her walk and she starts to walk upstream. And her community starts shouting at her, where are you going? We need all hands on deck. You need to stay right here. And she says, I'm going up the river to see if I can prevent the kids from falling in the river in the first place, or at least teach them how to get out of the river while the water is still relatively tranquil. So this story really illustrates what we mean by upstream prevention. The truth is, most suicide prevention is really focused at that intervention level. So intervening in a crisis right there at the waterfall's edge. So training lifeguards, building watchtowers, learning CPR. And when we're talking about mental health, intervention is often heavily focused on identifying risk factors, warning signs, and making sure that people in a crisis receive the proper mental health care and referrals they need. And is this important? Yes, absolutely. We need that piece for sure. We need to be able to recognize when people are in a crisis, and we need to be able to intervene. But intervention is not a comprehensive prevention strategy. So Sources started asking, what if we move upstream to prevent the very onset of suicidal ideation and suicide attempts? What if we work on building those protective factors into the community? So teaching resilience and teaching coping strategies, fostering connection, right? And support so that people don't fall in the river in the first place. Or if they do lean over the edge and fall in, they have the skills and the strength to be able to swim to the edge, right, by themselves and get out of the river while the water is relatively calm. So the founders started asking, what would this look like? How do we move prevention strategies upstream so we can intervene sooner before a full-blown crisis? So Sources of Strenght was designed with those questions in mind. Sources primary mission, as you can see on the slide, is upstream prevention. So we want to create resiliency by focusing on strengths, help seeking, and connection. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Recognizing and building our strengths so we have them to lean on during times of stress. There's also a secondary benefit to sources at the intervention level, so at that waterfall's edge. Taking an aggressive upstream approach allows for more effective intervention. And it does this by changing the code of silence up here in the upstream, which increases help-seeking behaviors before a full-blown crisis. And then we also actually see a third layer of impact as well on postvention. So postvention is after there's been a death or a loss in a community. And we can use this model and remind ourselves during that time what gets us through difficult times. So we want to shift that conversation to what brings us hope, health, and strength. We know that effective postvention is effective prevention. And we want the community to be leaning on their strengths during that time. So with this prevention model in mind, and before we dive into the strengths, we want to start with acknowledging that sometimes life is hard, right? We don't want to ignore or pretend that tough things don't happen, because we know they do. And Erin promised that this would be as interactive as possible. So here we go. I would like to invite you to think about this question and put your thoughts in the chat. If you were to go out and survey your friends, family, or fellow colleagues and ask them what their top stressors are in their lives, what do you think they would say? So what do you think those people in your lives would say are the top stressors right now? Erin, what would you say your top stressor is?
Yeah, we see some people work, money,
good.
kids, doing schoolwork with kids at home, right? We hear that a lot. Being aware, like, how do we manage all of this? Money is a common topic that comes up. Having too much to do with never enough time to do it. Making sure our kids are okay, right? As we navigate this time, worrying about wellness of our own children. All of you chiming in on the chat, that is so, thank you for participating. And also please know that when we do these trainings, you're normal. This is not abnormal stuff. We're all feeling really, really stressed. And that is part of life. So Christine, I'm gonna challenge you to do the next parable super fast so we can get to the wheel.
All right, okay. Talk as fast as I can.
Don't talk fast, but just, I want to keep an eye on the time too. Yes, Mike, loss of connectedness. I like that one. Thank you.
So we know that some stress can be helpful, actually. Not when it's really extreme or chronic, for sure, but some stress actually can be helpful and help us prepare for things like presenting and tests and things like that. So this big structure is called a biodome. It's located in Arizona. And to me, it just looks like a big, gigantic snow globe. But scientists built this biosphere to study how different parts of nature work. They planted everything in there from moss to huge trees, and they observed how they grow. They noticed that they noticed something really interesting about these gigantic trees. They would grow and grow and grow, and then just fall over one day. So scientists being scientists, figured out what was happening, and they realized something really important for the stability of the trees was missing in the biodome, and that was wind. There was no wind in the environment. Wind, they discovered, is really necessary to help those trees grow those strong, deep roots that stabilize them. The resistance of the wind allows them to have more resilience. So stress helps us humans in a similar way. We don't live healthy lives by completely avoiding all stress, right? Some stress helps us build those strong roots. We believe this happens through our strengths, those people and places and things that help us get through the ups and downs we experience in life. So that's what we're going to explore today, are those strengths. And while we're doing that, we'd like you all to think about what helps you root down as you navigate the stressors that you're facing in life.
Absolutely. And so fill the chat up so everyone, so we can share out what you are using to help you stay strong. I drew a picture because I'm a really good artist, and wanted to share, right? Some of the things that help us, or help me, right? Is yoga, Shavasana being my favorite, going on a hike, although we don't actually have mountains, as you know, here in Cincy, but French Park, watching Netflix, calling a good girlfriend on a walk. These are the things that really help me just feel connected, help me kind of get out of the narrative in my mind that I can't always stop playing. I see in the chat music, faith, and family, a good sweaty hour of exercise, working out, a nap. That's my favorite one. Walking in nature, coaching your kids' sports, and seeing their joy. These are all things that we love to lean on. So we want to think about that as we look at this sources wheel. So I'm going to pop it up here on the screen. And Christine, will you share how this all started?
Sure. So Sources started talking to thousands and thousands of people and asked them, when you've gone through something difficult, what helped you cope? How were you able to heal and maybe even grow stronger? And out of those conversations emerged this wheel. And Sources noticed that this real wheel is really what resilience looks like, what coping looks like, what actually just living a healthy lifestyle looks like. So Erin and I are going to take a lap around the wheel. And while we do that, we invite you to think about how these protective factors show up in your life and how you connect with your strengths. We'd love, again, to hear from you in the chat because there's lots of wisdom in this room, we know. So I think we're going to start out by looking at family support, which is the first one. So this can look really different for different people. Some people grew up in a family with super strong family support. And some people came from kind of rough families where maybe immediate family might be more of a source of stress, right? Can anyone relate? So for some of us, our family is a family of choice. Those people who support, nurture, and care for us, but aren't necessarily related to us. Erin and I were working in a school recently where a young man said he doesn't have a lot in terms of family support, but his best friend's mom was the one that showed up for him, the one that came to his games, bought him shoes, checked in with him to see how things were going. So raise your virtual hand if you have a chosen family, someone who has grown into earning maybe the name of family. So maybe not related to you.
And maybe shout them out in the chat. They might not actually see it, but maybe they'll feel it out there in the ether, right? Thank you to my Uncle Ed, right? I can always talk to you about the financial stuff.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I see lots of hands in the attendees that are raised. So I think a lot of people can relate to that for sure. Okay. So something that we often hear is that a person's chosen family often started out as friends. So we're going to move into positive friends piece. Has anyone here had a negative friend, right? So
we all
Erin?
went to middle, Christine. We've all had a negative friend.
Right? Most of us have. I bet we'd see lots of hands if we could see you all. So those friends that are just kind of energy draining and who aren't very encouraging or supportive. Maybe we've even actually been one of those at times in our lives. So if you ever have had a negative friend in your life, you know how important it is to have positive friends. Those people that lift you up, who help us make healthy decisions, right? And push us to be the best people we can be. So I would like to know in the chat, what are the characteristics that you look for in a positive friend? So what qualities are important to you in a positive friend? For me, I look for a friend who's a good listener and is non-judgmental. Really fun is also a huge bonus, by the way. If any of those people are out there, we need to go have coffee. So what about you? Let's see. Trustworthiness, wisdom. Yes, absolutely. Listener, silly. I love sillies. Brave, absolutely. Somebody who's encouraging. Dependable, right? When you need someone that you know they're going to be there. Someone that doesn't dismiss your thoughts. Absolutely. I think those are really good examples of what to look for.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that. Moving on to the next strength, we have mentors. So when we think about mentors, we often think about someone who might be older than us or someone who has more experience than we do, someone we can learn from, right? Mentors are the people that are cheering us on in life. I bet you all can think of some of those people right now. This is somebody you could work with, someone in your faith community. If you're a student, it could be a teacher or a coach. And we'd love to hear from you in the chat how your mentor has been positive influence in your life. Because evidence has shown us that individuals who have enjoyed ongoing success, like CEOs and professional athletes, or anyone who's been at the top of their industry, all have had a mentor along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And mentors are also really protective or having a mentee is really protective for people as we get a little bit older. And so it kind of goes both ways. So regardless of your age, this is a really important piece of the wheel that I would love for you to explore. It's one I've been working on building up in my own life. And I love how Jean put in the chat that mentor can challenge you. Or a friend can, I think we're working on mentors. So that's very true, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially I know when I was teaching, I needed that extra help along the way. And now we're gonna, mentors, oops, I hit the wrong button. Okay, that's not what I want. We're gonna look at healthy activities. And so, like I said, when I shared my poster, right? Healthy activities could be heart healthy. And you could do a little raise of your hand raise your virtual hand if you like those heart healthy, walking, running, any of these things, biking. I see a lot of hands going up, right? I love it. I love it. But healthy activities can be so much more actually than just heart healthy. It could be gardening. My neighbor continues to try and get me to garden. And every time I'm like, Susan, no, I'm not going to garden. I'm sorry, it's not happening. Because that's not a healthy activity for me, and that's okay. Some people like to spend time with animals. Some people like to play video games, music, right? Some like to play it, some like to listen, art. I have another friend who likes to cross stitch. Because she says that she likes to stab things repeatedly in a healthy way. And I love that. And so we want to think about these. What is it about these healthy activities that really make them healthy for us, right? What is it that these healthy activities do? And something about these healthy activities, it really helps us sometimes get out of our head and into our body. They can help calm us down. They can bring us energy. They can also help build our confidence. And this is true, again, for youth, but also people of all ages. And these healthy activities will change over time as well as we go through different life stages. So those are some of the things we want to be thinking about when we look at healthy activities and thinking about how we can lean on someone else's healthy activity and see if it works for us as we're trying to grow potentially in that strength. Then after that, we're going to move over. Gonna give me a second. I'm doing the tech side and talking, and my brain doesn't like to do two things at once. We're going to look at generosity, right? And generosity can be acts of kindness towards others and ourselves, both big and small, that can really positively impact how we feel about ourselves. You can be generous with your time, your money, your resources, your skills, your power, your attention. And there was when I was in the training with Mark, he's the founder, he said the most beautiful thing, and it has stuck with me forever. And so I'm going to share it with you. He talked about how I'm going to tell you about generosity, right? People who have felt suicidal often feel like a burden. People who have experience with addiction often feel shame. And people who have experienced trauma often feel broken. And so generosity seems to mend these feelings and make us feel proud and purposeful. The more people practice generosity, the stronger they feel in a good way. It's a supercharged strength. It's more than kindness, it's intentional. And they like to say at Sources that generosity is like pumping weights for the soul. So if you're ever having a moment where things just feel like too much, or you identified with any of those burden, shame, or broken pieces, I encourage you and I invite you to find a way to be generous. And it doesn't have to be with money, especially during COVID. It could be baking for a friend. It could be watching a friend's kiddos. It could be giving a stranger a compliment and really meaning it and sharing that with them. There's so many ways for us to be generous right now outside of just that financial piece. So I encourage you to try it. I know there is a group of women in my neighborhood, and we have all been generous with each other in so many different ways, with our time, with our baked goods. And it has really, it's been really powerful for me. The next piece of the wheel that we're going to be sharing is spirituality. And I don't know about any of you, but if you've ever been in a school-based situation, sometimes schools hear this word and they get a little worried. But what I want to share with you and what we think about at Sources is that spirituality, really, we like to look at the root word spirit, right? So who are the people, the places, and the practices that lift our spirit, that connect us to something bigger than ourselves, right? That make us feel purposeful with who we are, what we're doing in this world. And if we don't feel like we have that right now in this moment, turns out that's okay too. Another way we can invite spirituality into our life is to practice gratitude. For some that don't know, if you practice gratitude or writing down 3 new things you are grateful for every day for 21 days, we can literally shift the way our brain is scanning the world. So humans were wired to see the negative, right? Way back when I'm living off the land, if there was a cheetah next to me or a beautiful sunrise, it was very important for me as a human to notice the cheetah and get out, right? But our brain is still wired that way. And with so much negative news infiltrating us, we need to be intentional with how we can search the world for positive. And after 21 days, you will start to see that you are training your brain, just like you might train for a marathon, to start searching for positive. So I invite you, I challenge you, I encourage you to practice this. To try it out and do it with your family, share that. Another piece that I learned through Sources that I love is there's research showing that our brains cannot do gratitude and anxiety at the same time. So if you're ever in a situation where you're feeling very anxious, I encourage you to try and look around and find 1 or 2 things you're grateful for. So we would love to see, as we move forward, fill up the chat. Right? Show us what you're grateful for right now, right here in this moment, so that we can start practicing that as a community. And that's another one of my favorites. And the idea, and also I like to note, right? If you're feeling anxious, or practicing gratitude will reduce your anxiety. It will not just get rid of it. So keep that in mind too. And so we are going to, I love seeing stuff come in, right? Loving the spirituality, husband, work, kids. Jean, that's lovely. Community, your wife, and you have shared the best part of your day every day. Oh my gosh, every evening for the past 20 years. Great way to end the day. I love that. I need to start practicing that instead of just going to bed, zoning out and saying, let's just turn on the TV. I love that. Thank you. Grateful for your children, a great meal, helpful husband, significant other. This is lovely. Thank you for participating. We have such great attendees. Christine, how did we get so lucky?
We do. And Erin, gratefulness practices too really start getting those feel-good hormones. That's that serotonin and dopamine just flowing in our body as well. So there's an actual chemical change that happens.
Oh, I love it. Thanks, Christine.
Yeah. So we're going to move on to physical health. So physical health, when we talk about that, it's anything we do at all to keep ourselves healthy. It's a way we care for ourselves on a regular basis. So right now, it could be things like wearing masks to keep ourselves healthy and other people around us healthy. Going to the dentist or the doctor, taking medication. even taking a shower, just our basic grooming things. So we do all of these things to take care of our physical health on an ongoing basis. It's not just things we do in an emergency, right? It's those things we do to stay healthy, like stay hydrated and eat lots of vegetables and stay active. We do these trainings in person. It's really fun. And if we were in person, we'd likely be playing some kind of game to help us connect with our strengths. That's a real interactive way to participate. And we'd be moving around the room a lot. And if this were the case and I tripped and really twisted my ankle and was in pain, you'd be like, Christine, I'm taking you to the doctor. Or you'd encourage me to put my leg up and put ice on it. And you'd encourage me to take care of my physical health because I don't have to be in pain, right? I don't have to be in physical pain. So it's really important that we do things to protect our physical health and seek care when something's wrong with our bodies. But the same thing goes for our mental health, and which is the next part of the wheel.
Yep. And like Christine said, right, we know she's in pain and she doesn't deserve to be there. So mental health is not the absence of illness, but rather the presence and practice of the strengths and strategies that contribute to our well-being. This includes connecting, especially for our young people, connecting to a trusted adult and a mental health professional for support. Like I said, in Christine's example before, she hurt her ankle, right? She is in pain. We know she doesn't deserve to be in that pain. We know there's someone that can help, and we know that she can recover. And the same is true for our brain and our mental health. If we have a brain sprain, as we like to say in my family with my kids, we got to go to the brain doctor. I know that Christine, if she had something happening mental health wise, we know that she's in pain. We know that she doesn't deserve to be in this pain. We know there's someone that can help, and we know that she can recover. And so we must find and connect with these mental health supports. And so we will show you how to do that. And if we aren't in pain, right, we need to be practicing wellness all the time, because we want to be preparing for when we might actually have a little bit of a brain sprain, as I like to say. And that seems like I'm simplifying it, but it's just an analogy. So I know that it can be more complicated than that. And so now what we want to do is share with you, right? We went through this wheel pretty quickly, and as engaging as we could. We want to share with you, what do you do now, right? We just went through all this. How do I do this in my everyday life? And so we want to invite you to start practicing strength on the regular, at home with your family. So and Sources has plenty of options and ways to do that are a free resource. As before, like I said before, we must practice this mental wellness for when the big storms come. So we can truly, like Christine said, root down, so we don't get knocked down by the winds of life. Just like we might train for a marathon, we must practice wellness and resilience so we are resistant to being toppled over by life storms. And we need to be able to acknowledge that sometimes we might need extra help, right? And that's okay. It turns out we're just a human. And so I want you to know that if you go to sourcesofstrength.com, and Christine put it in the chat, there's a home screen. It'll look something like this. If you click on Discover at the top, it'll bring up another drop-down menu, and you can click on COVID resources. And it will bring you to way more than this, but these are some of them. One of the things I love, Christine is putting the link in the chat there. It's a student self-care card. And I encourage you to fill it out as a student of life. I encourage you to have your kiddos fill it out, and because it really helps you think through, who are my people that I can go to when I'm struggling or need extra support. And struggle might mean I'm having trouble on my math homework, right? Or I'm having a friend conflict. And what are the things I can do to help me calm down, energize myself, and who are my people? So you can get that in the link. There's also lots more. So these are even more things that you can get and access at no cost. It's all in their free resource site that they've put together. There's classroom materials, there's a teacher toolkit, there's an emotional check-in, strengths, all sorts of stuff. The next thing I wanted to share is that, and Christine is going to put this in the chat too. We at 1 in 5 are doing our best to bring you education as well. And so we have a State of Mind speaker series that you can access through initiative, 1in5.org, initiatives, State of Mind speaker series. And there's a library of on-demand videos recorded by professionals in the mental health space, talking about different topics that you can see there. We also have our building blocks for health and wellness. It's on our homepage. And so we are doing a bit of a year-long campaign talking about the different pieces of wellness. So we encourage you to check that out. We also want to show you that if you are and do find yourself in a crisis situation, you can access so much help. Cincinnati has such a strong system of care. And so if you go to Crisis and Emergency Services, you can access the national numbers, but you can also find the number for a mobile crisis unit, the Cincinnati Children's Intake PICU intake response team. So many different resources there, and it's a long list. Those are just a couple that I highlighted. And as we wrap up, before we open it for questions, I wanted to just share one more thing. And we've mentioned, you might have heard us mention hope, help, and strength. So Sources is very adamant that we spread messages of hope, help, and strength, and we avoid messages of sad, shock, and trauma. So we encourage you and your family unit, your community, whatever that looks like, your friend group, your kiddos, to start practicing hope, help, and strength. Hope meaning talking about and sharing, inspiring, encouraging, and empowering stories. Help, talking and being honest with people about how to get help, where to get help, where you can get help from. And talking about that with kids at the youth level, and hearing what their perspective is on it, and then helping educate them if you feel like they might not know all the pieces. We want to normalize help-seeking behavior with everything from homework to harassment and our physical and mental health. We don't want to have a false normalization of people thinking everyone is dying by suicide or everybody is suicidal, which is why we want to push out these messages of hope, help, and strength. And when we talk about strength, we encourage you to access these free resources. Click on the how to practice strength at home, and focus on these 8 protective factors that the wheel shows and how those strengths, and share with your family, your friends, how those strengths have helped you. Again, focusing on stories of strength and our individual and community assets rather than just our deficits. Or the things that are overwhelming or stressful. We want to honor and acknowledge that life is hard. Pandemic living is hard. Not being able to see friends or family or give someone a hug is very hard. All of the things happening in the media are hard, but what is helping you? We must always shift that narrative to truly help our youth know that we don't just stay in that stuck place. So with that, we are going to open it up to questions. We encourage you, you can put them in the chat, you can put it in the Q&A. We would love to answer them. And if we don't have the answer, we will find it for you and we will email it to you. Christine, did I miss anything?
No, I don't think so. I see I do see a question in the chat. It says,
Yeah.
Social media is a strong force to reckon with regarding normalization of suicidal behavior /cutting /self-harm. How do we combat this?
Yeah, that's really difficult. If I had the answer for that, I would probably be in the Bahamas right now, because with all my money. But I think that, again, it comes down to having honest conversations, engaging with peers, with some of the young people on what it means, the hope, help, strength. I know that seems really too simple, but I don't know if there's like the one magic thing that's going to happen, right? There's no one magic bullet, like we like to say. So thinking through how we can shift that narrative, right? You know, I heard that this really difficult thing happened. I know someone else who got through it. Can I tell you about what they leaned on, what strength they leaned on? And it doesn't always have to be like, I know, or I don't want to like take someone's voice away, but sharing what helped other people get through those challenging situations. When we do our work at the peer group, some peers will share some really tough stuff. And the question we always ask them after is, you're with me here. So what on this wheel, right, has helped you get through it? Let's look at the positive things. So that's the best I got. I know, I wish
Erin,
I could do a better
I do
one.
want to say that there's a video in our State of Mind series called Social Media and Mental Health.
Mhm.
And there is a man who speaks about, he's an expert and speaks about the impact social media has on health and connectedness and how we can address some of these challenges. So that might be something to check out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's another question. Do you think a mentor needs to be older than you? I mean, at this age, no, right? I don't think so. When we talk with our youth, we like to talk about someone who's a little bit older, primarily because they can give some high school kids a little bit of that, and middle school kids a little bit of that perspective of, middle school doesn't last forever, high school doesn't last forever. But I think as we mature, I definitely don't think that that's true. Let's see. Is this a motto that has been adopted by Forest Hill schools? I'm going to pass it to Christine because I do the sources work.
Yeah, so we do work with Forest Hill schools. They've not adapted Sources of Strength. We would love to work with them in that, but not at this moment. Do our counselors use the verbiage with students, and should teachers? Absolutely. So, and when we talk with teachers and when we do our education in schools, we always talk about, even if they're not using the Sources of Strength model, we talk about the importance of help seeking, of leaning on our strengths. So we're always using that as as Erin says, shifting the conversation.
Yeah. Another question, how do you encourage teens to reach out for help? That's another tough one. We really like to talk about how reaching out for help isn't a sign of weakness. I think we try to address it in a variety of ways. Reaching youth is rather difficult, but we like to, and Christine, you can add on to this, but sharing stories of people who have reached out for help and how that has positively impacted them has been powerful for us. Sharing that message and having them share like what helps them get through hard times. And again, trying to normalize therapy for people is another thing we're working on, but we're trying to do it right with TikTok, trying to be a positive influence on TikTok, trying to do it through this educational series, through webinars like this. We work with the Youth Council for Suicide Prevention, again, trying to reach people in lots of different ways.
And also it's a great, well, just as a parent myself, I try and model that help-seeking behavior and talk about that with my kids, just to help encourage them then when they are struggling to also, that it's okay, as Erin talked about normalizing that conversation around help-seeking, and that it's okay to reach out for help when you need it. And helping them also sometimes identify ahead of time who that trusted adult might be in their lives, whether it's you as a parent or a teacher. It's not always the parent, right? But it could be someone else. So having those conversations before maybe a crisis occurs is, who do you reach out to, helping them make that connection.
Mike said, combat social media with mentors and helping encourage friends and family to connect in other ways besides social media. I love that. I listened to the social media talk that we posted to our website. They talked about like a digital detox. So putting your device away, and they did it at a camp setting for a week. But again, encouraging true connection is really powerful, and doing it through play, I think can be, which the camp thing is an easy out, right? Not out, but like an easy avenue rather. But is there a way to have like game nights? I heard about some parent like taking everyone's phones when they came into their house. I was like, oh, the kids might not come back. But right, and what are the ways we can do that and talk? Well, I think also talking about our kiddos with the challenges of social media, the positive and the negative. And yes, Mike, normalizing the mental health conversation, right? It starts so young. And if you haven't had a conversation with your kiddo, that's okay. You're here now. So maybe this is a great way to introduce it, right? This is a very safe, Sources of Strength is a very safe way for you to talk about mental health. Because if you noticed when we went through the wheel, we didn't talk that much about suicide. We didn't talk that much about self-harm. We didn't, or at all, right? We talked about tough things happening and difficult situations arise. What do we do to help, right? We kept shifting. And so I think that is a really healthy way. Your wife and you have been talking about mental health with your kids since they're preschool. Mike, I love that. I've been trying to adopt that mentality within my role. We have a brain, like I said, we have a brain doctor or a play doctor, and they help us with play, and it helps us process how we're feeling and big emotions. There's so much out there to help us. So I encourage checking out the 1 in 5 website. I encourage you to check out the Sources of Strength free stuff, things you can practice at home to start that conversation, because like I said, sources would be an easy way to start discussing this content. Any other questions? There's a hand up. Is that left over?
I don't know. Feel free to put it in the chat.
Yes.
Erin, I thought maybe it might be worth just touching on for a minute the fact that when we talk about the sources wheel and all those different parts of strength, that we need to be building several of them, right? We need to utilize more than one at a time.
Yeah. So when we look at the wheel, and I'll just pop this back up for a second, I want to point out 2 things. One is that we want to have multiple strengths. So if you picture, I don't know if anyone remembers this, I definitely do. When we were in elementary school, you see the parachute and you're like, oh my gosh, it's parachute day, right? Everyone gets a piece and they get to wave it. If I am holding on to just the positive friend side and I'm trying to wave that parachute to keep a ball elevated, right? That ball's going to roll right off. But if Christine and I are maybe holding positive friends and spirituality, again, we might get a couple bobbles, but then that ball is going to roll off. So we really want to be thinking about how can we grow our strengths, right? How can we grow multiple? And at no one time are you going to have all of these. Just want to put it out there. At no one time are you going to have all of these. I worked with Mark Lomari, and he made that, like he was kind of the mastermind, and he's like, I've never had all of these at one time. But we just want to be thinking about how we can grow these various strengths. The other thing I want to point out is that if we only access one of these, right? And we talk about this with our kiddos. If I go to the physical health doctor and I say I'm having suicidal thoughts, and he gives me a prescription, sends me home and says, you'll be good in 6 weeks, it's not a healthy way for me to be practicing wellness, right? And the same is true if I'm a positive friend or or a mentor, right? If someone, or maybe just a family member, right? If my kiddo or my friend comes to me and says, I'm having a hard time, I'm having some suicidal thoughts, I am not protective enough to keep them safe. So I need to be accessing multiple supports to truly help them stay safe. And so we want you to be thinking about how can we be building these? How can we be growing all of our strengths? And then how can we tap into multiple strengths if we also are finding ourselves needing extra support? And so with that, we're right at our time. So I'm gonna pass it if Mike is available to close us out.
Yes, thanks, Erin. Thanks, Christine. First of all, that was just really good. I loved how that was interactive. Got our audience participating, thinking about different strengths. I really enjoyed it myself. I learned a lot. I love the upstream approach. Mental health, people need to be proactive. It needs to be something that needs to be worked on regularly. Just like physical health, where we need to exercise on a regular basis, we need to exercise our mental health and strength. And so I love that upstream approach. You talked about generosity. Without the generosity of all the members of the collaborative wouldn't exist. Without the generosity of 1 in 5, this program wouldn't have been made available. So thank you so much to all of you for putting this together. You did a great job. And, thanks to the participants for joining us this evening. I just wanted to end with a couple things. This is part of the speaker series that the collaborative puts together each year. As far as the time of the year, we do them in January, March, and then we take a break for the summer, and then our next ones will be September and then November. As far as the topic and who's going to be speaking in September, that's still to be determined. Also want to encourage everyone, if you're looking for resources, if you're looking for information, you're looking for articles, please check out our Facebook page. We post articles and information just about every week. We probably have close to 100 different postings at this point. And so, anything and everything related to mental health, I encourage you to check it out. We also have posted our past webinars on the Facebook page. So if you want to check out some of the ones we've done in the past, I encourage you to do that as well. But that's all we have for this evening. Again, thanks to all of 1 and 5, Erin, Christine, Nancy. Really appreciate all you've done and putting just a great webinar together this evening for everybody. Again, be well, take care of each other out there, be supportive, focus on your strengths, and encourage others to do so. So with that, good night, everyone.
Have a great
Bye.
one. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.